Hi, this is Tim Mobley. I'm going to share some thoughts with you about adult learning. Adults as learners have specific qualities. Addressing these qualities will improve their learning experience and make it more meaningful. Using what we know about adult learners will also help them engage and retain the information and the skills that we are sharing with them. And it'll be a lot more fun for us too. Let's take a few minutes to explore the characteristics of adult learning. Adult learners, Rotarians, if you've done any training with Rotarians, you know that they like to have some control over the learning. They like to be more self-directed. If adults don't get some buy-in to the learning, if they don't get some involvement in the learning, they're going to resist. They're going to play with their iPhones, they're going to message with their friends, they're going to Facebook, play solitaire or whatever. And in the worst case, they'll even try to sabotage your efforts. The next characteristic is something that is really important, and that is using life experience. The people that we work with are going to have vast life experiences and a diverse life experience. And so we want to call upon those experiences. Many times the answer is in the room. And so we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. And as important in that life experience is connecting what we're trying to help them with, the new learning, with their previous learning. If they can't match those up, then it's not going to work. And a good question that you might ask to help them connect that up is, how would you use this? How can you see this being beneficial to you or your district or your leadership team? Help them connect the learning. We don't really have to spend much time motivating our learners. They're there because they want to be. The big key here is connecting with them and keeping it fresh and not letting it get boring or stale. We want to keep things moving. We want to keep them engaged. Adults tend to be pragmatic. They don't want to know theory. They want to know what actions, what applications the learning has. How can we use it toward what they need? And so again, questions here are, how might this work in your district? How could you apply this? And working in small groups and large groups, talking about how the learning might be applied or used, how you can turn it into action. You know, learning is not necessarily a primary focus. A lot of people have outside demands. They have things that they want to accomplish. They have children or grandchildren, or they love to fish and golf, and learning is just not necessarily something that they want to spend their time and energy on. Learning takes energy and it takes focus, and the older we get, the less of those that we have. And so it's important to understand that if we don't make it relevant, then they're not liable to spend the time on it. And that fits right into this one too. Learning fits into the margins of their lives. It's not the bulk of what they do, unless it's part of a vocation where they have to go and learn a new product or learn some new process. So we're working with busy people. If we don't make it relevant, if they don't see how it fits, they're not going to take much time with it. Not all learners have had a wonderful experience when it comes to learning, especially back in the institutional learning, and we carry that forward with us. And so we need to make this as positive and an involved experience as we can with them. Their study skills may not be up to snuff. They may not have done that for a while, especially working with data, which may not necessarily be exciting. So we have to really support them in taking a look at that and learning how to use it and why it's important to take a look at. And lastly, we want to make sure we're not putting anybody on the spot. We know that we're not calling somebody out to answer a question. That's the best way to get people to shut down. So try to involve everyone and bring people into the conversation gently. We know how difficult change is. There's all kinds of quotes about it, how difficult change is. But what you have to understand is that throughout our lives, we've seen change, some of it good, some of it bad, And we generally stand back and take a look at it and kind of weigh it against our own situation. We tend to be skeptical about change and not just changing for change's sake. How will it make my district governorship or my presidency or whatever it is better? So it's really important to, again, go back and connect and talk about how this is going to improve their efficiency as a leader in Rotary. This goes back to that life experience, and most of the people we work with have vast experiences and very diverse experiences, and the more we can draw that in and use that diversity to our advantage, the more rich our discussions will be. So just consider that, how you can continue to draw those people in and share those experiences. The last one here is kind of a bummer, but it's true. The older we get, the more challenging learning becomes. We tend to need more time to learn. We have to think about it more because we have a whole lot more connections in our brain that we need to reconnect this new learning to. So it actually does take some time. We also have to make sure that the environment in the room is conducive to learning. As adults, we tend to be a lot pickier about the temperature of the room, where I sit, can I see, can I hear? All this is important. And I know that controlling the temperature in these in conference rooms can be a challenge sometimes, but the better we can make it, the more important it is for these adult learners. All learners, adult or not, learn more when they're engaged in the content. Research has shown that using interactive strategies will increase a learner's engagement in learning. A good rule of thumb is to avoid talking or lecturing for more than 20 minutes by creating opportunities for interaction. Strategies can be active or passive. Examples like turning to your partner to discuss a question, working in pairs, triads, or small groups are active approaches. Asking your group to jot a note to themselves. Use hand signals like give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down what you think about this idea. Take a moment to read a passage or a quote. Are more passive. The key is to remember to come up with a pause in your presentation to encourage your group to engage. Think about your own learning. Some of us engage quickly in discussions. Some need more time to reflect and process before speaking. Your group consists of both types of people. Avoid the trap of continually asking for a response and calling on the people who raise their hands first. Once you start developing a variety of approaches, you'll find they will become a natural part of your presentation style. And I want to share a couple of ideas about learning in general and what we know from the research that's been on how our brain learns. And our brain learns best in certain situations. We tend to remember what we hear at the beginning of a presentation. We tend to remember what we learn at the end of a presentation. That's why the summary is so important. We tend to remember anything that has emotion attached to it, whether it's funny or sad or angry or whatever the emotion is, we tend to remember it. If you think back about a memory that you have in your past, my guess is that generally there's an emotion attached to it. That's why the memory is stuck there. And lastly, stories. Stories are so important. People remember stories. Start with a story. End with a story that ties it all together. Remember to summarize. The more you can use story, the more they can incorporate it into their own story, and the better they're going to remember it. This is just a graphic that shows how people remember things and the activity involved. And it starts with 10% you remember if you read it, all the way down to 90% is if you actually do it, or you experience it in some form or fashion, if you tell somebody else about it. That's why group work is so important, that we talk about what we're learning. The more we talk about it, the more we discuss it, the more we analyze it, evaluate it, the more we're going to remember it. So down the right side of this triangle are some ways you can develop questions and strategies and processes that take it from the describe it all the way down to the analyze it and evaluate it on the information that we'll be working with. I'm going to post this in the Dropbox so you can take a look at this again if you like. If you want to talk about it, please feel free to call me or email me if you have any questions on how you can use this. I want to talk about the preparation for the courses. Content is so important, and you have to know the content really well if you're going to use it. If you don't know the content, the process, which is the second part, breaks down because you can't focus on the process if you don't know the content in and out. If you don't have the process down pat, when you're trying to present the content, they're not going to remember it because it's going to seem disjointed and it's not going to be fun. So you have to do both. And so how do you get both parts, the process and the content, down so that your presentation is first class? The only way to do it is to practice. Once you have your slide deck developed and you worked with your partner, or if you're doing it alone, you have to practice it. Practice, practice, practice it. And there's nothing like doing it out loud. Saying what you're going to say out loud, even asking the questions. You're not going to get feedback from your bathroom mirror, but saying it out loud makes it real. So we owe these people that we're working with our very best effort.